Hello, we are going to go through your integer study guide. So the first two questions here, it says to model addition or subtraction on the number line to solve. So whatever number is first, that's where you're going to start at. So I'm going to start right here at -1. And then it says we're going to add 2. So if we're going to add a positive 2, we're going to go to the right 2. So 1, 2. And wherever you end up at is going to be your answer. So -1 plus a positive 2 is going to leave us with an answer of +1. All right, moving on to number 2. So again, that first number is where we're going to start at. So in this case, we're going to start at -2. And then this time we're subtracting 2. So instead of going to the right 2, since we're subtracting, we're going to go to the left 2. So we're going to go 1, 2. And again, wherever you end up at is going to be your final answer there. So -2 minus 2 is going to be -4. All right, next portion here, we are going to add, subtract, multiply, or divide. So just make sure you guys are watching the signs and you guys are following all the rules that we talked about in class. So looking at the first one here, I need to simplify that square root of 16. So what number times itself gives us 16? Well, that would be 4. So now I have 4 times a -9. So remember, when you're multiplying, you multiply these numbers like normal. So 9 times 4 is 36. And then a positive times a negative. I know that I taught my classes the Christmas tree. So if I take a positive times a negative, you cover up what you have, and then whatever you have left is going to be the sign of your answer. So in this case, it's going to be a -36. Remember that this Christmas tree only works when you're multiplying and dividing. It does not work with adding and subtracting. All right, so moving on to number 4. So I can see that we are dividing here. So again, you're just going to divide like normal. So 32 divided by 8 is going to give us 4. And then a negative divided by a negative. So cover up those 2 negatives on your Christmas tree. And whatever you have left is going to be the sign of your answer. So in this case, it's going to be a +4. Number 5, I have a -10 plus 4. So this is adding integer rules. So I see that I have different signs. So when you have different signs, you subtract the numbers. So 10 minus 4 is 6. And then you keep the sign of the largest number. So since 10 is greater than 4 and 10 was negative, that means that my answer is also going to be negative. Number 6, whenever a number is shoved up next to parentheses, that means that we are multiplying. So just multiply 5 times 11 like normal. So 5 times 11 is 55. And then use your Christmas tree to figure out what answer you are going to have, if it's going to be positive or negative. So I have a -5 times a positive 11. So I have a negative left, so that means that my answer is going to be negative. Next one, number 7, 4 minus 19. So this would be the keep, change, or keep, change opposite that we talked about in class. So you keep first number the same, change subtraction to addition, and then add the opposite. So since this is a positive 19, it's going to turn into a -19. After that, you just go back to your adding integer rules. So I see that I have different signs. So again, when you have different signs, you subtract like normal. So 19 minus 4 is going to give me 15. And then you keep the sign of the largest number. So since 19 is bigger than 4 and it was negative, that means that my answer is also going to be negative. All right, next one, number 8. So I see a fraction bar. So remember, fraction bar means that you are dividing. So we are going to divide 56 divided by 8 like normal. So 56 divided by 8 is 7. And then again, use your Christmas tree to figure out what a negative divided by a positive is going to be. So negative divided by positive is going to be a negative. Number 9, so I see subtraction, so I need to do my keep, change, or my keep, change opposite. So keep -9 the same, change, subtraction, change subtraction to addition, and then opposite of a positive 13 is a negative 13. and then you just go back to your adding integer rules. So I have same signs, so since I have same signs, that means I'm going to add like normal. So 9 plus 13 is going to give me 22. And then you keep the sign of those numbers, so since they were both negatives, it's going to be a negative. All right, next one here. So I see that I can simplify this square root. So what number times itself gives us 25? That would be 5. And then now I can simplify the whole expression here. So I have negative 58 plus 5. So going back to our adding integer rules, do we have same sign or different signs? We have different signs because I have a negative and a positive. So you subtract the numbers like normal. So 58 minus 5 is going to give us 53. And then you keep the sign of the largest number. So since 58 is greater than 5 and it was negative, our answer is also going to be negative. All right, number 11. So again, I see a square root that I can simplify first. So what number times itself gives us 36? That would be 6, because 6 times 6 is 36. And then I'm going to rewrite everything. All right, so this goes to our keep change opposite, or keep change change. So you're going to keep the first number the same, change subtraction to addition, and add the opposite. So since this was a negative 15, the opposite of a negative is a positive. So in other words, 6 minus a negative 15 is just the same as 6 plus 15, and that would give us 21. All right, next one, 0 minus 20. So again, you can use your keep change opposite if you would like. So you keep the first number the same, change subtraction to addition, and add the opposite. So since that's a positive 20, opposite of a positive 20 is a negative 20. So 0 plus negative 20, well, 0 plus anything is just that anything. So that means that our answer here is just negative 20. All right, next one, I have negative 5 times negative 9. So again, you're just going to multiply like normal. So 5 times 9 is 45. And then use your Christmas tree to figure out if it's going to be a positive or a negative. So when you take a negative times a negative, it will give you a positive. All right, number 14, so here we're dividing. So 50 divided by 5 is going to be 10. And then a positive divided by a negative, again, use your Christmas tree. Positive divided by negative is going to be a negative. All right, number 15, I can see that I can simplify this 4 squared. So remember, 4 squared means 4 times 4, not 4 times 2. So 4 times 4 is going to give us 16. And this is where we're following PEMDAS. So remember, PEMDAS is parentheses, exponent, multiply, divide, add, subtract. So now that I got rid of my exponent, now I see that I can do multiplication because I have 2 parentheses shoved up next to each other. So you have to multiply 2 times negative 7. So 2 times negative 7. 2 times 7 is 14. And then a positive times a negative is a negative. So now we have 16 minus a negative 14. So again, using our keep change opposite rule, you keep 16 the same, change subtraction to addition, and then add the opposite. So the opposite of a negative 14 is a positive 14. So then 16 plus 14 is just going to give us a positive 30. All right, and then looking at number 16 here, so I need to simplify this numerator first by taking negative 2 plus a positive 10. So I see different signs, so since I see different signs, that means I'm going to subtract. So 10 minus 2 is 8, and then you keep the sign of the larger number. So since 10 is greater than 2 and 10 is positive, you're going to leave 8 positive. And then your last step is to take that 8 divided by negative 4. So just divide like normal. So 8 divided by 4 is 2. And then a positive divided by a negative. Again, if you use your Christmas tree over here, a positive divided by a negative is going to leave us a negative. All right, moving on to the next page. So it says, order the numbers from least to greatest, then correctly place the numbers on a number line. So first thing when I'm looking at these numbers is I can simplify a couple of them. So like this one, remember these two lines that are vertical means absolute value. And remember that absolute value means distance away from 0. So that means distance is always talking about a positive. So the distance away from 0 from -9 is just going to be +9. So I'm going to cross that out. So the square root, or not square root, sorry, the absolute value of -9 is +9. And then here I see that I can simplify the square root of 49. So again, what number times itself gives us 49? That would be 7. Okay, so now they want us to place these numbers in order from least to greatest. So we have 5, 9, -3, 7, 0, and -8. So when you look at a number line, remember the number that's furthest to the left is going to be the smallest number. So in that case, that will be -8. Next, we have next to the farthest left would be -3. Then the next would be 0. Then we have 5, 7, and then 9. So again, when you're placing numbers in order from least to greatest, you always want to think of a number line. You always want to think of a number line when you're putting numbers in order from least to greatest. So the numbers that would be furthest to the left are going to be your smallest numbers, and then the numbers furthest to the right would be your greatest numbers. So if I were to plot these, notice how we already have letters with the points there, so I'm just going to indicate where they would be at. So -8 would be right here at A, -3 would be right here at B, 0 would be at C, 5 would be at D, 7 would be at E, and 9 would be at F. All right, and down here, I guess that's where they wanted us to put these letters. So 5 was at D. The absolute value of -9 was at F, because that was 9. -3 was at B. Square root of 49 is 7, which was at E. 0 was at C. And then -8 was at A. All right, moving on to the next one. So we have two positive integers, m and n, are given. Select whether the value of each quotient is positive, negative, 0, or undefined. So quotient, remember, means division. And they just tell us that we only have two positive integers, m and n. So my advice is to just pick two random positive integers for m and n. Just make sure it's not 0. So let's say I do 1 and 2. Okay? So looking over here, I just need to indicate whether it's going to give me a positive number, a negative number, a 0 number, or an undefined number. Okay? So if I have 0 divided by m, remember, we put m as 1. So in other words, this would be like 0 divided by 1. So something that I taught my classes is the okay and no. So it is okay to take 0 divided by a number because that gives you 0. But no, it's not okay to take a number divided by 0 because that gives you undefined. So looking back at our expression here, we have 0 divided by 1. So remember, it is okay to take 0 divided by a number because that gives you 0. So this expression is going to give me a 0 value. All right, moving on to the next one. So here we have negative m divided by n. So remember, I can just plug in my two numbers that I have there. So that would be negative 1 over 2. So negative 1 over 2, well, obviously that's going to be a negative number. All right, and then our next one here, so I have a negative divided by a negative. So if I had my 2 to plug in for n, that would become a negative. And then my 1 to plug in for m, and that would become a negative. So remember, think back to our Christmas tree. If I have a negative divided by a negative, negative 2 divided by negative 1 would give me a positive value. Because again, a negative divided by a negative is going to leave me that positive number. So this expression would be positive. And then the last one here, n divided by 0. We had n equal 2. So in other words, this would be 2 divided by 0. And going back to our okay and no, remember, it is okay to take 0 divided by a number, but no, you cannot take a number divided by 0 because that will give you undefined. So anything divided by 0 is going to be undefined. So that means that 2 divided by 0 is not possible. So that is an undefined answer. All right, next one here. So which expression has a value of square root of 49? So remember, square root of 49, we are trying to figure out what number times itself gives us 49. So in this case, that would be 7, because 7 times 7 gives us 49. So the expression that has a value of square root of 49 is going to be A here. And looking at the other ones, 7 squared would be 49, so that's not correct. You can't take the square root of a negative number, so that's not correct. And then 7 times the square root of 7 is definitely not going to give us that 7. All right, next one. A student is playing a game with numbers and starts with the number 10. Select by circling all the ways that the student can reach a sum of 0. All right, so let's just take these step by step. So if they start with 10, and then A here says they add 10, is 10 plus 10 going to give us a sum of 0? No, that gives us 20. So that one's not correct. So A is not correct. B, add negative 10. So I start with 10, and then I add negative 10. Is that going to give me a sum of 0? Yeah, it actually will, because 10 plus a negative 10, or in other words, 10 minus 10, does equal 0. So that means that B is going to be one of them. Next one, so again, we start with 10, and then here we're subtracting 10. So does 10 minus 10 give me a sum of 0? It sure does, because 10 minus 10 is 0. Next one, subtract a negative 10. So I start with 10, and then I subtract a negative 10 from that. Is that going to give me a sum of 0? Well, if I do my keep, change, I would then end up with 10 plus a positive 10. And that's kind of what we did up here with A, and that gives us 20. So that means that that does not give us 0. Add the additive inverse of 10, or add the additive inverse of negative 10. So remember, additive inverse means just the opposite. So additive inverse means opposite. So if I add the opposite of 10, well, opposite of 10 is negative 10. So that would be 10 plus negative 10. And notice how that's the same expression as what we had up here for B, and that did equal 0. So we know that that's going to be 1. And then last one, add the opposite of negative 10. Well, the opposite of negative 10 is a positive 10. So does 10 plus 10 give us 0? No, that equals 20 again. So it would be B, C, and E. All right, 24. Write a real-world situation that could be described using the equation shown below. So this says we started with negative 6, and then we added a positive 6 to get us 0. So just think of any situation that you would start here, you would add that amount, and then you would get back to 0. So the first thing that I think of when it comes to integers is money. So I could say something like, I started with negative $6 in my bank account. Then I deposited or deposit $6 in my bank account, which left me with $0 left. So again, you can think of any situation that makes sense. It has to be a real world situation that would describe a negative value plus a positive value. Again, money just makes the most sense, so probably just stick with money in this case. All right. Next, it says evaluate the absolute value of negative s minus w when s is negative 14 and w is negative 6. So remember, when you have these type of problems, all that you're going to do is you're going to plug those numbers into where they belong. So in this case, they told us s was negative 14. So this would be the absolute value of negative times negative 14. And then minus w, which was a negative 6. All right, so this looks a little confusing here. So let's simplify the absolute value first. So here, think of this as like a negative 1. So in other words, we're going to have a negative 1 times a negative 14. So remember, a negative times a negative is going to give us a positive. And then just 1 times 14 is 14. So we're just cleaning this up a little bit. And then remember, when you have a minus negative, you can do your keep, change, change. So this is going to stay absolute value of 14. We can change subtraction to addition, and then add the opposite. So the opposite of a negative 6 is a positive 6. And then lastly, I can still keep simplifying this absolute value. So remember, absolute value is the distance away from 0. So since 14 on the number line is 14 spaces away from 0, that means that the absolute value of 14 is 14. So then my last step is to just take 14 plus 6, and that would give us 20. All right, so another one here, it says evaluate x plus 4 divided by 10 when x is negative 4. So again, if they tell you x is negative 4, you're just going to plug in negative 4 where it belongs in that expression. So if I plug in negative 4 for x, it's going to be negative 4 plus 4, and then divided by 10. So simplify the numerator. So negative 4 plus 4, I have different signs. That means I subtract. So 4 minus 4 is 0. So now I have 0 minus 10. Going back to our okay and no that I taught us. So it is okay to take a 0 divided by a number because that's 0. No, it's not okay to take a number divided by 0 because that's undefined. So in this case, can I take 0 divided by a number? Yeah, we can. 0 divided by a number is okay because that just equals 0. So 0 is our answer. Moving on to the last page here. So we have a table talking about the lowest elevation and the highest elevation. Number 27 here says, what's the difference between the highest elevation in Florida and the lowest elevation in Colorado? So keyword here is difference. Remember, difference means that we are subtracting. So what we need to do is we need to take the highest elevation in Florida, which is 355 or 345, and take the lowest elevation in Colorado, and we are going to subtract those numbers. So we're going to take 345 minus, because again we're finding the difference, and then negative 3,315. All right. So going back to subtracting integer rules, we can do our keep, change, opposite, or keep, change, change. So keep 345 the same, change subtraction to addition, and then add the opposite. So the opposite of a negative is going to be a positive. So in other words, I'm just taking a positive 345 plus 3,315. So we can do that over here off to the side. So 5 plus 5 is 10, 1 plus 1 plus 4 is 6, 3 plus 3 is 6, and then 3 plus nothing is 3. So the difference between the highest elevation in Florida and the lowest elevation in Colorado is going to be 3,660 feet. All right, so next one, what's the difference? So again, we're subtracting between the lowest and highest elevations in New Mexico. So the highest elevation was that 13,161. The lowest was 2,842. So we're just going to subtract those together. All right, so again, we can do this off to the side. So 13,161 minus 2,842. All right, so I can't take 1 minus 2, so I have to borrow. So 11 minus 2 is 9. 5 minus 4 is 1. I can't take 1 minus 8, so again, I'm going to borrow. 11 minus 8 is 3. 2 minus 2 is 0. 1 minus nothing is 1. So the difference between the two would be 10,319 feet. All right, moving on to the next one. So you currently have a balance of negative $20. You just deposited a check for $45, then withdrew $8 for lunch. What's your current balance? Explain your process and show all work to receive full credit. Okay, so keywords here are deposit and withdrawal. So remember, deposit means that you're putting money into your account, so that means that it would be adding it back into your account. And then withdrawing money means that you're taking it out of your account, so that would be subtracting it. So to explain my process, you're just going to explain how you would solve it down here. So I would say we would start with our balance of negative $20. Then I would add $45. Lastly, I would subtract $8 to find my ending total. Okay, so again, when you're explaining your process, you're just putting in sentences what you would do to solve the problem. Okay, so just like we said, we would start with our balance of negative 20. When we deposit money, that means we put money in, so we would add that $45 check. And then we withdrew, so that means we subtracted money from our account. So we withdraw $8 for lunch. So now we just solve it. So just take it one step at a time. So negative 20 plus 45, I have different signs, so I'm going to subtract the numbers. So 45 minus 20 is 25, and it will be a positive 25 because 45 is greater than 20 and 45 is positive. So then our last step is to take that 25 minus 8. And again, you guys are more than welcome to come over here off to the side to solve it. You can't take 5 minus 8, so you have to borrow. So 15 minus 8 is 7. Bring down the 1. So that means we're going to have an ending balance of $17. All right, and then last up here, describe the relationship between the following pairs of numbers. So we have 4 squared and the square root of 16, 9 squared and the square root of 81, then 10 squared and the square root of 100. So this is when we talked about perfect squares and perfect square roots, about how they are inverse operations of each other. So like when you take 4 squared, you get 16, which is that perfect square root. When you take 9 squared, you get 81, which is that perfect square root. So we could say when you square a number, you would end up with its perfect square. Which you can square root it to make them inverse operations of each other. And again, it does not have to be word for word here, okay? Just describing the relationship that when you square a number, you then would end up with this perfect square root. I guess I need to put root here. All right, and that is it. So if you guys have any questions, just let your teacher know.